My next patron question is from Benjamin, who wants to know where I stand on sex scenes in movies. Do you think it's time for Hollywood to retire the sex scene? When I first read this question, my immediate thought was that I did not see why they should. If a filmmaker thinks their movie requires a sex scene, they should have the freedom to include one. However, the more I thought about it, I realized this was a rather complex question. Like anything in a movie, it is possible for those sex scenes to be gratuitous and serve no plot or character purpose. It all depends on the execution and how you use it. If you cut the scene, will the movie be worse without it? There are certainly examples I can think of where sex and even nudity just felt like it was there merely to titillate and excite a certain segment of the audience. An infamous example would be the epic film Caligula. Produced by Penthouse magazine founder Bob Guccione, this was his attempt to legitimatize the pornographic film. He even got Gore Vidal to write the screenplay and hired respected actors like Malcolm McDowell, Helen Mirren, and Peter O'Toole. However, Guccione and director Tinto Brass had different visions for the movie, and Guccione ultimately took the film away and added extra sex scenes. The cut of Caligula I watched on the DVD was an attempt to bring it back to Brazzi's version, and even then, one of my biggest problems was how forced the nudity is. Yes, the Romans were known for their orgies and other such activities, and Caligula especially took part in some wild parties, but the film really overdoes those aspects to the point of ridiculousness. I recently watched an Israeli film called The Kindergarten Teacher, and that was a good film. However, there were two sex scenes that I personally found rather distracting and did not really develop the lead character. Instead, they took attention away from the main plot. I think if these two scenes had been cut, nobody would have noticed anything amiss. People often talk about the use of sex and nudity in horror films. There's often that part featuring the young people sleeping with each other or making out, seen from the point of view of the killer. These can occasionally be just there for the sake of it, but there are horror films where they end up being significant. After all, the camp counselors being too busy doing the deed is what leads to Jason Voorhees drowning. Mrs. Voorhees' entire motivation in the first Friday the 13th even comes from not wanting to see that happen again, and that disgust for sex eventually passed on to Jason in the sequels. A number of horror films even use the sex scene as social commentary. Another genre where the sex scene is common is, of course, the romance. When done right, these could be subtle and intimate portraits of the love two characters have for each other. They give us an understanding of the protagonist. These scenes are said to be very awkward for actors to film, so it's a credit to them as well when they are pulled off. However, when not done well, they just feel unnecessary and occasionally over the top. One notable instance is in Tommy Wiseau's The Room. These are extra awkward because he also directed and wrote the film, and they feel like they're in the film for his own ego. I remember watching The Room and just feeling bad for the actress having to participate in this. There are also movies where we just suddenly cut from the characters having normal conversation to them jumping into bed together with absolutely no flow, and you just sit there thinking, wait, already? Then you have comedies, which can revel in gross-out jokes involving sex scenes. Some of these can be funny, like in the American Pie films. There's a lot of humor gained from Jim's mishaps with sex and things turning out wrong for him. Sometimes not even with another person, as the famous apple pie scene can attest to. And then there are comedies where the jokes are merely disgusting. I talked about Porky's in a recent video, and how I did not find that movie the least bit funny. Why? Because the jokes were largely based on nothing more than laughing at genitals and naked bodies, not to mention all the sex-related crimes committed by the protagonist. So as I said, the sex scene can be a necessary part of telling the story, or they can just be there to excite a very immature audience. It all depends on the execution, the motivations of the filmmakers, and how well integrated they are. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on the matter in the comments, and thank you for your question, Benjamin.